gave me when I arrived here was to recognize I was following a man of such sweet and gentle spirit, and hoping that this church was gracious enough to recognize and accept a decided contrast. And then I discovered that Pastor Reagan told the children right in front of me that when something is old and doesn't work, it's not good. I'm old and I don't work.
Brother, you're good.
In 2000, when my wife and I completed our ministry here, I said goodbye to many of you. And my goodbye included, I may not see you again until we get home. I have been back 5 times. Nobody now when I say goodbye, they say, yeah. Anniversaries are great. They're fun. In fact, my wife and I are going to celebrate our 53rd anniversary next week, and it's a great joy and delight to be here. But I've wondered sometimes why we have anniversaries, because the tendency is to look back, and as a younger person, I didn't want anything to do with all that looking back. I wanted to look ahead. What's coming? What's around the bend? And then I read this very interesting story in the book of Joshua, chapters 3 and 4, where Joshua leads the children of Israel. He's taken over from Moses, which must have been a tough job to follow somebody like Moses, because every time he says something, they'd say, well, Moses didn't do it that way. And most of us pastors have experienced that kind of thing, you know, saying so-and-so that preceded you didn't do it that way. St. Eric. But you know, the children of Israel under Moses had had the incredible experience of crossing the Red Sea on dry land. But that generation was gone. Nobody remembered that. Now they come to the Jordan River to go into the Promised Land at last. And God did it again. He opened up the Jordan River and they walked through. But in that story, there's the interesting instruction that God gave to Joshua. Take a man from each one of the 12 tribes and have them go into the river on that dry land and pick up a big rock out of that river. Carry it on their shoulders out on the other place. Go to Gilgal, your main camping, and put it in a pile. So that every time you start to wonder, what in the world are we doing here? Is God really with us? Do we have a future? What about my depression? What about the sad times? What about the dark days? Look there. That's a pile of rocks that you cause to stimulate remembering. And so I think of this time together as looking at the rocks of remembrance that God has given to you and to us as a congregation. Certainly, my wife and I have been the last few days rejoicing in those rocks of remembrance. That's the purpose of the celebration, to remember what God has done. It was not, isn't it amazing that these men were strong enough to carry these big rocks? That's not what that pile of rocks was about. It was to remember the work of God, who had done what could not possibly be done. There's an interesting little sidelight. Joshua then goes down into the center of the river where they stood with the Ark of the Covenant, the priests, and he puts a pile of stones up himself, leaves them in the middle of the river. And I, in my imagination, say, you know, those stones, they never showed up until the river was really low, until times of drought and all the rest. And there they were, a sign of God's faithfulness, even in the low times. Now, we have not experienced any low times here at the International Church. It just seems to have grown. Many of my friends in the black church in America have the pastor's wife is known as the first lady of the congregation. And Susan is not a pastor's wife, but Susan is the first lady of this congregation. And I think it needs to be said that her faithfulness is borne witness witness to by looking at this congregation. When my wife and I were here, we did not have as many children as they do here. Now, my, beautiful children. The word to Joshua was, when your children ask, what are those stones? Tell them of the works of God. Now that you have all these wonderful, beautiful children, tell them of the works of God. Deuteronomy says that we should talk about it while we walk by the wayside, and while we sit down, and when we eat, and while we sleep. And that's the kind of natural instruction of the works of God that we are to give to our children. And then there is the rocks of witness. It says in Joshua chapter 4, these stones are a witness to the surrounding nations that your God is a great and powerful God. They are a reminder, not only is a memorial a rock of remembrance, not only rocks of instruction, but rocks of witness. To remind us here at the International Church that God wants lost people found. And one of the ways in which He is choosing to do that is through the joyous ministry of the International Church of Lucerne. May God bless you richly and even